I'm going to invite our legislative guests to come up one by one, and they can fight over the chairs if they'd like. Judy Boyle is in her 6th term in the House, serving the Midvale area. She was the Natural Resources Director for former Congresswoman Helen Chenoweth, and has been named one of Idaho's 100 most influential people. So, thank you, Representative, for being here. Senator Ben Toews is one of Idaho's newest state senators. He's from up in my neck of the woods, the Coeur d'Alene area. He is in his 1st term, and he's the incoming vice chair of the the Senate Education Committee, and most importantly, he's a Zag. So, glad to have him. Senator Lori Den Hartog is in her 5th term from the 22nd District, and she's the incoming chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. Vice Chair, I beg your pardon, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Representative Bruce Skaug serves the people of the 12th District, and we won't hold this against him, but he's an attorney. Tell me what your thoughts are of that poll that you saw. Anything surprise you from those polling numbers? Representative, you want to start first?
Yes. Okay, everybody hear me in the back? All right, I have a soft voice, that's why I asked. So, first, my last name's pronounced Skaug.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And Chris and I just met today.
Yes.
I agreed to be here because of that mission statement right there. When I read that, I said, well, this might be an okay organization, so thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Very much for putting this on. On the poll, not a big surprise anywhere, but it was very affirming to me of what I know from my constituents in my area anyway, so I like that affirmation.
Senator? We'll have to share the mics then.
Probably the same, not a lot of surprises. Perhaps on the issue of the folks who aren't aware of school choice or don't know, I think sometimes those might even be parents who have kids in charter schools. A lot of times people don't think about charter schools or homeschooling as being within the school choice umbrella. And so I think, maybe diving in a little bit deeper with some of those respondents would maybe deepen their understanding of what they're even participating in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really appreciated the question on the transparency in school spending. It's been something that I and several other legislators have been working on for a number of years.
Senator Toews?
Yeah, same, not a lot of surprises. I'd say similar to what the gentleman that was presenting said. I didn't realize the percentage of people that didn't know about school choice was that high. So that was a little bit surprising to me, but I thought it was very useful survey and information.
Representative Boyle?
Well, the same thing with me, school choice. I mean, I can't imagine because I've been on education for so long. What do you mean you don't know what this is? So that just tells me we're not doing a good job about educating people on what that is.
There's going to be a lot of new members of the legislature. You're one of them. Tell me about the learning process, what it's been like for the past couple of weeks as you've been kind of getting your feet wet, and then to our other panelists here, what do you expect with just a whole crop of new legislators coming in?
Well, there's no doubt there's a lot to learn, and there's a huge amount of information that comes at you really quickly. Fortunately, I've been kind of preparing since I won my primary. I didn't have anybody in the general, so I've been doing things like researching what the Senate rules are and trying to understand how the process works and watching. It's like watching in sports, you watch the tapes to know how everything works. So I'm kind of reviewing the tapes and understanding how the plays go. So it's been a great learning process. The orientation was fantastic. I felt like they brought us up to speed pretty quickly. I got really excited when I was touring, especially the library part. I thought it was so interesting, just being able to look at all the background behind every piece of legislation that's ever been made in Idaho, and even the conversations that went into the Constitution. So I'm excited.
Representative Boyle, do you want to take it next there about what you're looking forward to, or maybe what you're fearing with so many new legislators coming in?
Well, I'm always thrilled that we have lots of new legislators. They are so much fun. They bring us lots of new, fresh ideas. The flip side is they are very naive and susceptible to lobbying. So I hope they will take with a grain of salt what they hear. It used to be, before I was ever in the legislature, I hung around down there, and the lobbyist would literally give you both sides of the issue. That was like a badge of honor with them. Not so anymore. Some of the older ones still do, but now you only hear what they want you to know. So I hope freshmen will do their own research.
Senator?
Similar to Representative Boyle, I think the enthusiasm that our new senators and representatives are bringing this year is really exciting to me. Balance that out with maybe some cynicism and realism from those of us who have been there a little while, and I think that's a healthy balance. Like, I think we need the new energy and excitement. None of us is going to be there forever, and so having new folks come in and be ready and willing to take the torch of an issue that we've been working on for any number of years and continue that work and carry forward, I think is really exciting. I certainly have been hearing from the new folks and from our legislative services staff. They've been busy drafting legislation, so I think we're going to see a lot of legislation introduced this year.
Representative, anything you want to add?
I would only add that we now have some inexperienced new chairmen of committees. So that's going to be something new. They have experience in the legislature, but not in running a committee. And so I hope there's a lot of grace to those new leaders.
I want to go through one by one with all of you. What is your number one priority? If I asked you, what do you want to see accomplished by the time you sign and die? What is it?
Homeowner property tax relief. It's a must, and not just because I want it, but because everybody's talking about it all across the state, and we failed the last 2 years. We've utterly failed. We should all go home and be sent home if we don't do something this year.
Senator?
For me, it's expanded education, choice, and freedom. I think, again, there's a wide variety of ideas and things out there, and seeing what other states have done certainly is inspiring. And there's been some of us in the trenches on that issue, and this is where we're excited to have some new folks come to the table. And I think we can do some big things this year, so I'm excited on that front.
Senator Toews?
I'm really tempted to say property tax reduction because I paid my property taxes yesterday. So it's right up there. School choice is my top priority. It's what I ran in my platform when I was running, talking to constituents, going door to door. I can tell you that there are a lot of people. I'd say I'm probably knocking on the doors of people that vote, and I'm wondering if maybe some of the poll numbers were maybe people that don't vote or aren't maybe as engaged in the political process. Because the ones that I went door to door to, they were really supportive and passionate about school choice, and specifically education savings accounts and what that could do, putting the free market principles of that kind of a program to education in our state.
Well, since they've already taken school choice, I'll talk about the surplus and the budget. I hope that we are finally able to do at least a few agencies of zero-based budgeting. We have programs, we have never really looked at the base and what they accomplish and what they spend, and I think that is vital for taxpayers. The other thing is the giant surplus. Instead of keep sending the $300 refund, how about we lower the tax rate instead of overcharging people, and use that surplus for some things we really need. Property tax for one thing, maybe. We have a whole list of things that should be done. I have not had one single person who has contacted me asking for a refund. They ask for other things like property tax, like no grocery tax, a lot of other things like that.
The special session lowered the income tax rate to 5.8. Do you think there's room to take that down further, or should the main concentration be on property taxes versus income taxes? Thoughts of any of you?
I don't, the tax policy has to start at the house anyway.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, homeowner property tax relief, because that is what people are asking for. Not, again, not my preference, maybe, but that's what my people want, so that's what we're gonna do, I hope.
I think I would just add to Representative Boyle's point, I think we are not getting phone calls, at least I'm not getting phone calls or emails about our personal or corporate tax rates. I think there is still work that can be done in terms of lowering them, but that's not what the average citizen is clamoring for. So I think there's still room for that to be done. Personally, I would like to see us finally take up the issue, whether we're going to put it to bed once and for all, the grocery tax issue. I think that's something that has been swirling around the legislature for a lot of years, and I think with this many new members, I think there really is an opportunity to take it up and settle the issue once and for all. As you all know, we have the tax credit that you get on your income taxes for groceries. That could be a way to buy that rate down, and I think that's an issue that could be solved.
Senator?
Yeah, certainly increasing the reduction of property taxes got to be high priority. I actually have a friend of our family that they saved their whole life. They bought a place on the lake, and a few years after they retired, they had to sell that because the property taxes were too much for them to really maintain because of a fixed income. So I see property taxes especially insidious because there's a kind of a feeling that we don't really ever own anything.
That's communism.
Totally agree
Yeah.
with that, Ben. I think it's shameful that we are taxing people's homes. I wish we could just completely get rid of that, and maybe we can find a way, all you freshmen with your great ideas.
We've seen so many other states jump in with education choice. Different plans. Tennessee does it one way. Arizona's the full savings account model. I think part of the reason why, and I talked a little bit about this with Robert as well, part of the reason why those numbers may have been the way they were is because it said all of the state funding. And maybe folks see they hear the all and they're, maybe I don't want all of it. But every other time we've seen polling on education savings accounts, it's been pretty high up there. And I think there's this, there's a little bit of a misperception on what education savings accounts means, because it doesn't necessarily mean the Catholic school or a religious school. It could mean after school tutoring, or it could mean a variety of different things. My son is a special needs kid who needs extra tutoring after school, and luckily my wife and I have been able to afford that, but a lot of families can't. And so talk to me a little bit about if you were king or queen for the day, what kind of education freedom options would you want to see? And what could get through the governor's signature? And then also, if they file a lawsuit against it, what could stand up in court? Anyone want to take that first?
I'm happy to start. Couple of different things. I think I have, at least for me personally, a long-term goal of what I think is possible in the state of Idaho, and then I have a short-term goal of what I think is possible this legislative session, and that goes to some of the realism and cynicism. I'm a little less optimistic perhaps than others, and some of that just is born out of experience and years of attempting different policies. So first of all, what we've seen in other states. What Arizona accomplished this last year with a single vote majority really is extraordinary. And we have a super majority. And it is going to be an uphill battle in the Idaho legislature for any education choice policies to get through. I think that's the base, and I think we have to come to it with that understanding, and come to it with the understanding that we need to educate not only our fellow legislators, but the people that we represent about what it could mean for them and their families and for their children. So with that being said, where Arizona is today is because of a decade's worth of work that they put in as a state legislature with smaller programs, policies addressing children with special needs, military families, really a wide variety of kids who had additional needs within the education system, and really looking for options that they weren't being served in the current system. So we've tried any number of policies in and around that area. One thing that we've been able, and I also want to preface this by saying that Idaho has a robust choice atmosphere. I mentioned before, we have public charter schools, we have a healthy homeschooling constituency in our state, and those were hard-fought battles. And the other thing that is important for legislators to remember is that we have to defend the areas where we've gained ground already. So we have homeschool families who are very protective of the rights that they have. We have many families who've moved to Idaho because of the freedoms. We don't require homeschool families to register with the state. That's different than many other states across the country. So I think we have to realize that we really have a healthy and robust choice atmosphere right now in Idaho. That being said, one of the things that I and many of the legislators in this room were involved in was the Empowering Parents microgrant program. And to your point, microgrants is I think one type of inroad that we could see. Right now, the program that we got passed is income limited. It's limited to a certain dollar amount, and it's limited to its uses for expenditure of funds. However, where it's not limited is that all kids, regardless of where they currently get their education, can apply. So whether you're a homeschool student, a public school student, or a private school student, you can apply for these funds. So if you need therapies, if you need to pay for your sports fees, music lessons, whatever the case may be, those funds can be utilized in that way. So I think an expansion of that program currently is only being funded through federal funds. I think this year, for me personally, I would like to see it continued with ongoing state funds and an expansion of uses and an expansion of the income limits and the total dollar amount. Would I like to get a full education savings account? You better believe it. And I've told people, I'm like, you bring it, I'll vote for it. I don't know if it'll get across the finish line, that's more the realist, but I definitely think there's some other things that we can do along the way.
Not sure who wants to.
Yeah, I'll jump in just because I'm the idealistic freshman senator here. So when I see what Arizona has done, I think that can actually fast forward what we can do as well. So I think that anytime legislation moves forward in other states, that it can pave the way for that. So I'm excited about the possibilities. And secondly, I just want to tell a story about a friend of mine who has a special needs child. They get a grant from I think it's from the federal government to help with speech therapy for their son. And they were telling me about how they were shopping around and there wasn't enough money in the grant to cover the cost of speech therapy at the public school. And they looked at some private options and they found one that was a fraction of the cost of the public school speech therapist. So they were able to use that option and multiply the effects of the money that they had. And I just think that we can take the same idea and we can expand it. We know that free markets force things to get more efficient. And it's not to say something bad for a public school system. In fact, I tell people all the time, they're like, what if this legislation could gut our public school system? And I say, do you really have that little faith in our public school system? Really? I think there's a lot of people that love their public schools. They're happy with, they're great with their kids going there. I don't think that there's going to be a mass exodus, but there are children that are underserved because every child learns at a different rate. They learn at a different age, and they need to have options that can allow them to be trained in the way that's best for them, and the parents are the best ones to help figure out how to do that.
Representative, before you go, let me just do a follow-up to all of you. School choice, and tell me if you agree or disagree with this, school choice does not mean shutting down the public schools. Okay.
Absolutely. To me, school choice is about raising the bar for the kids. Kids will go to whatever level that you set that. So America has always been about choice, and with choice comes competition and innovation. Why are we afraid of competition and innovation? We shouldn't be. Why should we just continue funding a system that have failed a lot of our kids? This is about their future and our entire country's future. And we should remember that. The kids come first, not the system. And that is why Idaho has very, very strong homeschooling protections, simply because of that case. So I am all for strengthening parental rights, absolutely. And some of the money that we are awash in, perhaps we could exchange for federal funds so that we wouldn't have all these federal strings, including having your girls worry about boys in their locker rooms or their restrooms.
Additional questions? Let me ask you about, oh, go ahead, Tim.
I maybe was just going to add to that a little bit. We do have strong homeschooling protections, but that's to my point of we have to defend what we already have, what we've already gained in this space, and that's just as important as advancing new policy. And that's something, exactly that discussion was something that happened when we were working on the Empowering Parents Microgrants program. In fact, in the first iteration, we had homeschool families opposed to that. And so we worked really hard on making sure that we had language that didn't allow for intrusion by the government if a family accepted some of these microgrant dollars. It really was just based on the transactions that are happening on that digital platform. So I think it's really important for everyone who cares about that to be aware of it. And I've seen really good language in other states where they have strong education savings account programs where they have built in from the beginning protections for the folks utilizing those funds. And because the same concern happens for, like a private Christian school or a Catholic school, is then would the state be able to dictate curriculum or what you're teaching, or restrict your religious instruction? And I think that's something we would have to be on guard for and make sure that it's clear in the legislation.
Kind of addressing the issue that both of you just kind of touched on, and that is in terms of parents and their involvement in the schools and the school boards. With so many of the news stories coming out about what is happening to parents at school board meetings, being called domestic terrorists, extremists, and that sort of thing, I'm curious, what kind of protections as legislators are you looking at for all parents who are wanting to protect their children and being intimidated by the Department of Justice and other federal agencies?
Actually, I'm working on a domestic terrorism bill for Idaho so that we can protect parents. I don't think there's a single person that I know that's a domestic terrorist. They do not want to overthrow the federal government. That's somebody's fallacy. But parents are intimidated when they see things going on like what happened in Virginia, when parents are arrested because they go to a school board meeting and say, I'm upset because this boy raped my daughter in the restroom. He finally has justice, that dad, because now the superintendent has been indicted along with one of his staff members for doing this to them. But it does scare parents. They don't want that kind of publicity. They don't want any of that. Idahoans like being left alone, as you all know. So my bill is going to try to protect your right to be left alone.
Well, first, those of you that pray for us. We're part-time legislators. We have other jobs and other lives. I think all of us enjoy this work. Senator Ben, you will, I think. But second, let us know what you think, especially your own representatives and senators, by email. That's the best way. Phone calls, we get so many we can't keep up. But emails, and you say, I'm your constituent, and really mean it. Some do, they're not, and they put that on everything. But we try to respond to all that, and it really makes a difference. In the hallways I hear, I'm getting all these emails on this, and it's from their constituents, not from a group.
I just add to that, echo it, that I tell I haven't been through my first legislative session yet, but what I tell my constituents is that we really need to hear from them, because there's voices that we hear, especially I'm from up in North Idaho, so it's a long ways away. There's voices that I'm going to hear. I'm going to hear from my peers a lot. I'm going to hear from the lobbyists and special interest groups, but we really need the voice of the people to be loud, and we need to know what they think, because that's who we're here to serve.
What we really need is for those of you that email us, please put on the subject line constituent or District 9 or something like that, because when there is this hot button issue, we are flooded with often 500 emails a day on that subject. There's no way we can go through all those at once. We don't know, are you my constituent? Are you a group from maybe out of state? That really helps us identify things.
And I would just add, if you can, come and testify. We do allow remote testimony now, particularly for your constituents. That will be important, and that has been a really great advancement in the legislature. We've been able to hear from folks who are in different parts of the state, and I, for one, have really appreciated it. The longer you're in, and if you're on particular committees, there's kind of the usual crowd of suspects. Maybe suspects is the wrong word. That come and testify in certain committees, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I know. They probably know exactly how I'm going to vote by my facial expression, and I know just about what their testimony is going to be because I've heard it a couple times before. But that really is important, and make your testimony succinct and to the point, and that really is helpful as well if you are at all able, or if you can encourage your friends to do that. And that we know that can be difficult. Sometimes our agendas are published with short notice, so we know how difficult that can be. But as much as you can, stay engaged in any way that you are able.
Let's thank our legislative panel.